Hello, my friends. Happy Sunday. So good to see you. We are traveling through the stories of Genesis, right? The very first book in the Bible. And it's been such a fun adventure. If you guys missed any of our stories, don't worry. Just go on back to TVC Kids YouTube and you can see all the stories as we've been going through each one and showing how God is building his family, right? And so the most recent ones with Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. And now we got to Jacob a couple weeks ago. Do you remember anything kind of cool about Jacob? There's so many things. But there's Jacob had how many sons? Do you remember? Not one, not two, 12. 12 sons and one daughter. And so Jacob, he called out one of his sons to be very special. And that's who we started talking about last week, and that was Joseph. Now Joseph, he was very special because he was Rachel's son, and Jacob loved her so much. But Joseph was given from his father a beautiful coat of many colors. And how do you think that made his other brothers? Remember, he was number 11 in the line, right? So most of his brothers were older than him. And here he was called out special and given this beautiful coat. And so they were not so happy. Kind of like you and I get on our worst days where we can get jealous, right? So Jacob gave that coat to Joseph, and Joseph was happy. And then Joseph, he had a few other things happen. He had a couple of dreams. You guys remember those? One where the grain bowed down to him. Bowed down to his grain. There was one over here, and how many over here? 11. How many brothers did Joseph have? 11. So they said, do you think that God is telling you that we, all your older brothers, are going to bow down to you, Joseph? And he's like, yep, I pretty much think that's what it means. Then he had his second dream, and that talked about the sun and the moon and the stars. How many stars were there bowing down? 11. Again, how many brothers did Joseph have? 11, right? All right. So God was giving him these dreams, and that made those brothers angry. So angry, they threw him in a pit and left him there, and then finally sold him. And that is where we left our story last week. So are you guys ready to move on? Me too. All right, so I'm going to keep reading to you out of this great Bible. But so Joseph was sold to the Ishmaelites. Do you guys remember that? And he was taken to the land of Egypt. And Egypt, when he got there, it was very beautiful. It was very lush. So because it was on the Nile River. So Egypt was very beautiful and very lush. And Joseph was sold as a slave to a man named Potiphar. And he was a very rich man. And so he lived in a huge mansion. So think about that, a huge mansion. That's why I brought you out to this beautiful mansion. Think about the contrast of living in tents as Joseph grew up, and now he was living in this mansion, but he was a slave. And he had a lot, there was a lot of change for him, right? Now, what would be the one important thing for it not to change for Joseph? Joseph was in the land of Egypt, and even though there were big, beautiful homes, there was lush ground, they didn't believe in God. And so that was a very different place. Joseph was raised with all these brothers, and Jacob as a father, and Isaac as his grandfather, and his great-grandfather who had passed on, but that was Abraham. So he knew so much about God. He, just like you right now, learned so much about God when he was a young boy. So when he got to this land of Egypt, do you think he forgot? No. Even though he was surrounded by all these people who didn't know God, he remembered. He remembered what God had put into his heart. And he remembered the stories that his father and mother and grandfather had taught to him, right? He remembered the power and the grace and the love of God. So really, even if I stop the story right now, that's the best part. Remember that even as a kid, right now, just like you, take in everything you're learning and hold on to it. You never know where you're going to end up. Will it be a mansion? Will it be jail? Will it be a pit like Joseph was in? Wherever you are, remember what God has put into your heart. Remember what your parents have taught you and your grandparents, just like Joseph. So here he is. He's in this heathen land of people who don't believe, and he's in Potiphar's house. And he's there, and Potiphar's wife sees him. And he's lifted up again. No matter where Joseph went, he kind of became a leader. And so even in Potiphar's house, he was a leader among all the other servants. And Potiphar's wife sees him. And Joseph's a handsome guy. His mother, Rachel, is beautiful. And so he's a handsome guy, and Potiphar's wife decides that she wants to love Joseph. Is that right? No, because she's already married to Potiphar. So Joseph does not return her love, and she becomes very angry at him. And guess what she does? She tells her husband. She tells her husband lies about Joseph. And so Joseph was thrown in the dungeon. Now, did he do anything wrong? No. He actually got thrown in the dungeon for doing the right thing. Can that happen in life? Yeah, it could happen. Sometimes you could get in trouble for doing the right thing, but you know you have to do the right thing. So there's Joseph, and he gets thrown in the dungeon, and he's down there in that jail, and even there, he becomes a leader. And the jail keepers see that whatever Joseph does, things seem to go right. Why would that be? Because he has God on his side, right? God is walking with him and preparing him even in jail, even in the dungeon, even in this heathen country of Egypt, right? So here he is, and he's in the jail, and two of Pharaoh. Do you guys remember who Pharaoh is? He's like the big, mighty king in charge of all of Egypt, right? And two of his lead servants get thrown into jail. And Joseph is watching over him. He's kind of the caretaker of all the people in jail, and they come to him one morning, and they're just scared and nervous, and they're like, "We just had dreams." Joseph said, "I can answer your dream, but it's not because of me. God is the one who understands dreams. God is the one who can tell you what your dream means. And because I follow God, that's how I know." And guess what happens? He tells them exactly what his dreams mean. And you guys could go back with your mom and dad and spend some time reading about those dreams and what those mean. But he tells them what those dreams mean. And they get out of the jail. Those things come true. And he says to the butler, he's like, remember me when you go back to live with Pharaoh as his chief butler, right-hand man. When you're back there, remember me. Remember what I've done for you, and remember God. And what happens with the butler? What do you think? Human beings. He forgets. He doesn't remember Joseph. And so Joseph is back in jail for a long time more. And we're going to end our story there, and we're going to tell you more about his time in jail next week. But think about the main thing I want you guys to remember by this story is that Joseph, just like Abraham, just like Isaac, Jacob, he's walking with God and through some pretty rough times. Any of you guys ever been thrown in jail? Nope, me either. All right, any of you guys been thrown in a pit? Have you been sold? No, none of us have gone through such hard times. But Joseph was stayed close to God and remembered. Remember God's power, guys. Remember God's grace, and remember his great and beautiful love for you. Hang on to that this week. Keep learning more and more about God. And remember everything that goes in your mind and in your heart that Jesus is putting there. All right? Remember all you've been taught. Hang on to that tight now, because as you get older, you never know where you'll need it and where God will help you get through something. All right, you guys, I love you, and I can't wait to see you next week. All right, bye-bye.